Welcome into Bet the Edge on this Friday. Thank you, as always, joining us here on the NBC Sports EDGE YouTube channel. I'm your host, Sara Perlman, and of course, as always, I am joined by Drew Dinsick. And on the show today, well, it's going to be a fun one because we are in the midst of training camp, and the Hall of Fame game on NBC is less than a week away. So it is a perfect time to talk NFL futures. PointsBet head trader Jay Croucher, plus our very own Vaughn Dalzell will join us in just a couple of minutes to handicap markets for best and worst records in the NFL this season. Plus, as we always do, Drew and I wrap up the show with our Edge of the Day, our best bets. We got that and so much more coming up here on Bet the Edge, powered by PointsBet. Happy Friday to all of those who celebrate. Myself, Drew, you're included in that. What's going on? What's going on for the weekend? How are you?
Oh, it's been a relatively chill week betting wise. I think everybody is just kind of nervous because
your chill and my chill betting wise are very different. Your chill is still 10 plays going on.
I've gotten to the depths of just like firing on absolutely insane long shots in the NFL market, which is usually the way it goes when you don't have anything else to bet on.
Yes.
The story of the week and what everybody is nervous about. Trade deadline is approaching. Obviously, very emotional and memorable day yesterday for the Rays and the Orioles. I think everybody is wondering, what's going to happen here at the trade deadline. Do you have any insight?
I wish I did. Obviously, my life will be directly affected one way it goes, one way or the other. So all good. But there's a lot of moving pieces. And I guess it kind of began with Andrew Benintendi. He got traded to the Yankees. We'll kind of see what happens now with Joey Gallo and other pieces falling. I know they're also looking to add starting pitchers. In the betting market, I'm seeing a lot of rumors about Juan Soto as well and other trade chips. But that's the main storyline as we approach August 2nd. I wish I had better insight on my life as well as other players to see kind of which teams are going to make a push. But I think it's all going to come down to the wire with the added, expanded playoffs, kind of what happens with teams in the wild card race now. It's been fun to watch, and I really do think August 2nd, August 1st are going to be the wild days.
Well, we're feeling for you here, everyone over at the Bet the Edge family. Having a little bit of certainty and stability in life is important, and sorry that you're going through this, but I think realistically, the baseball trade deadline should shape the rest of this season from a betting standpoint. And so paying attention between now and August 2nd, 6 p.m. Eastern is going to be worth your while if you're.
How much will you fire on that when trades start happening and you look at the futures market?
I mean, there's one name that really moves the needle besides Trey, of course, and that's Juan Soto.
Right.
If the word comes across that Soto has been moved to a contender or even a fringe team, then I'm gonna have to see where I can find a slow moving book, a slow moving number, and try to get a little bit of exposure there, because obviously he changes the win probability of the World Series this year more than any player that I can remember being discussed as moved at the trade deadline. So that's the big one.
Yeah, that's some starting pitchers, of course. I know Luis Castillo, Frankie Montas, those have not been moved yet. So we'll see. Rumors about Shohei Ohtani, will he be moved? To be determined. I don't see that happening in your neck of the woods. Losing some fans out in Angels country is what I'll call it. But I think he stays an Angel. Mike Trout staying an Angel. We'll see what other moves are made. But of course, going to affect the betting market with starting pitchers, some good relief pitchers, and quite a few really talented hitters, as we know in the market as it comes down. But other things kind of going on. I'll run through NASCAR. I don't bet a ton of NASCAR. Not sure if you're getting involved at Brickyard. Chase Elliott, he's 4-1. He has finished top 3 in 5 straight races. Are you getting involved in the NASCAR betting this weekend?
I think considering what happened last week with the with the Hendricks team, I don't think it's crazy to expect there to be a little bit of chaos this year. This week in particular. So not going to bet the Brickyard at this moment, but definitely going to watch this market to see if I can catch any late steam or any long shots that are live in that one.
We're going to get to the NFL in a second. Last thing this weekend, must talk about UFC 277. That's in Dallas. Amanda Nunes taking on Juliana Pena. Last time we talked about this match for UFC 269. This is a rematch. Pena upset Nunes. She was plus 700 as an underdog. I might have to get involved now. Plus 225. Seems a little short as she's taking on Amanda Nunes, but to be determined. I have not bet anything in UFC 277, but I'll get involved for tomorrow night. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, expecting Nunez to get some revenge there. Pena was a live dog at the price for the last fight, but I don't see it at plus 225. And then only other bet I got, Orion, the Galaxy, inside the distance, minus 105, I think is worth a play. I'm expecting him to win pretty comfortably against Blood Diamond.
Okay, we got to get into the NFL. But first, this is a reminder. If you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands by predicting what will happen in Major League Baseball, on the PGA Tour, and NASCAR circuit. We also have a special contest on Tuesday or Thursday. That's called Battle of the Bets, where you can agree or disagree with our experts for a shot to win some cash. Make sure to check that out on the NBC Sports Predictor app. Win some money. Tailor fade our experts. Good way to get some cash in your pocket. Another good way to get some cash in your pocket, well, is to bet the NFL if you're good, like these two guys. That's Jay Croucher, head trader at PointsBet, and Vaughn Dalzell, with one of our very own analysts with NBC Sports Edge. Guys, how we doing? Thanks for joining the show. Jay, Vaughn.
Thanks for having me.
Likewise, doing well.
Okay, so let's get into the best record in the NFL. This is a really fun market, and we're going to get to worst as well. But this is really fun because I look at the Buffalo Bills. They're plus 450. And Drew and I have talked, and Drew certainly, I think on my side, we're high on the Buffalo Bills. We like Josh Allen. I know I did for MVP. But I look at the best record, and they're standing out. But they do play games in Buffalo where it's freezing towards the end of this season. Jay, what do you make of the best record in the NFL market?
Yeah, so the first thing I would look at here is schedule. And the Bills had a really easy schedule last season, even though they managed to blow some of those games, notably losing 9-6 to Jacksonville in the weirdest game of the past couple of years. But look, in terms of schedule, I think the first team that leaps out is the team that has the easiest schedule of anyone, and that's the Eagles. And they're 20-1 to have the best record. I know you're laughing, Drew, but I'm all in Eagles this season.
Jay, I'm happy to hear that because I am as well. So that is music to my ears on this Friday.
Yeah. Yes, and the good thing about the Eagles is that you only really need one domino to fall, and then they're rolling. And it's the biggest domino because they need Jalen Hurts to be really good. But if he is, then the rest of the team is so loaded. It's a weak division, easiest schedule. So they're a team I would look at. And then the other thing that I would consider is that with a market like this, you want high variance. Like I like the Vikings this year. They're not that high variance. They don't have the hugest ceiling. Whereas a team like San Francisco, who are also 20-1, they do have a big ceiling just because no one knows what Trey Lance is. And he might be terrible, but he also might be really good. And at 20-1, I don't care so much about the downside there. And there's a heap of upside. So two 20-1 shots that I consider in the Eagles and the Niners.
Jay, you're using all the good stuff right off the top. You got to learn to kind of pace it out a little bit, spread it out a bit. Those are the two best EV bets in this market, and it's not close. I think Eagles' schedule note is worth kind of zeroing in on a little bit more closely as if you're doing your homework, if you're prepping for the season, just digest the quality of quarterbacks on their schedule, and they because really that team. The secondary is still a little soft, still a little susceptible. If they're up against an elite quarterback, they're going to have a tough time, but there's just none on that schedule. So, I don't even really know that you need Jalen Hurts to take a meaningful step forward. If he just gives you last year plus, 10%, you're probably right in the mix there for a 13-14 win season. Same story with Trey Lance. We see time and again in the NFL, teams have a tough time adjusting in season when something new kind of, comes on the scene. The idea that no one really knows what Trey Lance is probably plays to their advantage, even if he does have the ups and downs, which you would expect from a first-year quarterback. So both of those shouts are outstanding. Even more broadly than that, though, pick an NFC team. The AFC is so much more talented than the NFC. And in general, those teams are just going to beat each other up. They're going to trade wins and losses. If there's a surprise, it's going to come from the NFC. Kicking it to you, Vaughn, do you generally agree with this philosophy, or do you think that there is an AFC team that stands above the rest that should be considered?
I mean, of course, the Bills being the favorite, you look at them. Last year, they lost, 5 games that were one-score games. They were 0-5 in those games. And that's something that I think we can all agree it's not probably going to happen again this season. But at the same time, it's AFC, like you said. When I looked at this, I was strictly in the NFC market. I did like the Niners, so I was disappointed Jay stole my thunder. I do think with Trey Lance being being the quarterback now, we're going to see a big difference. Like, there's a great stat out there that shows the comparison between the two guys with time to throw, the evade rate. deep passes, completion percentage, 20 yards or more. Trey Lance above Jimmy Garoppolo in every category. And I think we're going to see that offense take a step this year. So that Niners value, I think it is there. I also like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, I know I'm not going to overreact to the Julio Jones news. I don't think Julio Jones is going to be Randy Moss and come back and see that type of season from him by any means. But I do think the Buccaneers, with their strength of schedule, which is, one of the top 10 easiest in the NFL, and you look at the division, I mean, the Saints are their big competition. So the Buccaneers are a team with Tom Brady still is one of the teams to fear in the NFL. So I know their odds are, 5-1, definitely short, but I would look at them and the Niners. I definitely think those two provide great value. I'm going to disagree with the Eagles take, though. I'm going to say hold off on that one, guys. Cool off.
I like the NFC approach, even just looking at Tampa Bay, 13 wins last year. Green Bay, Rams had 12. Kansas City, then 12. It's a fascinating market, Jay. I am curious because betting in the futures market, having your money tied up for so many months, waiting to see the best record at the end of the season isn't for everybody, right? At PointsBet, how much attraction, how much action are you guys getting in this market in particular?
Yeah, honestly, on this type of market, not that much for the points that you raised, Sarah. People don't want to tie up their money for that long, but that's exactly why you should bet on it because when things aren't bet on as much, they are less efficient. So that's one thing I would say. Look, people do tie up their money on Super Bowl tickets, on conference tickets, even some division stuff. But once you get into this type of thing, there's not that much attention being paid to it. So all the more reason to dive in yourself.
Nope, that makes total sense. And even beyond that, like if you're going to tie up money, betting a 20-1 for a season long, like that's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, if you're I get that argument makes more sense for the win total markets about the not tying up money, but yet those get all kinds of action, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's just something kind of seminal, I guess, about the win total market that makes people more willing to bet them. But yeah, look, 20-1, that's not going to tie up too much for your bankroll, most likely. So definitely worth taking some stabs.
Okay. Well, before we pivot to another one of these kind of niche markets, which I think are your best way to kind of spend your time and deploy your capital preseason, the one other thing I want to make a point about the win totals and why that's not a good bet. If you have an edge that's big enough to bet a win total over or under, you are better off just betting that team against the spread during the regular season, because there's basically direct correlation between how the market is pricing those teams head to head against their opponents and you being bullish on that team doing well over the balance of the season. So, there's a lot to be said about why even bother looking at some of these niche markets. But this is one that I definitely do not have a strong read on. It is the highest scoring team in the NFL. And I'll start with you first, Vaughn, because I need a little help here. Typically, the highest scoring team is not necessarily the best offense. It's not even it's definitely not the best team, and it's usually not even the best offense. It has to do, there's an element of team needs to be playing the full 4 quarters if they're going to be, kind of in contention for that top scoring team. Anyone that kind of fits that blueprint or archetype as you look across the teams competing for this year's NFL Super Bowl?
Yeah, well, a lot of the favorites in this one is AFC teams, and they have a lot of the firepower offensively. And, you look at, to your mark, what you were just saying about betting a team like during the season instead of the win total. We look at the over-unders on some of these teams, and it's kind of the same degree if you want to talk about that. But like the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Bills, if you bet these teams week in and week out, you would barely make a profit in the season. For the Bills example, they were 10-9 to the over. You would have made $9, but they were one of the highest scoring teams in the NFL last season. And the Chargers and Chiefs, same way. These teams all caught fire towards the end of the season. So sometimes, it's hard to bet these teams at the same point consistently throughout the season, but you can find stretches where they put up tons of points. You could bet their team totals. But if we're looking at teams that are going to put up points this year, I mean, the Bills are number one team for me when it comes to the AFC market. I mean, they got James Cook, which I think will help their backfield. O.J. Howard will back up Dawson Knox, which is a nice compliment. But Jameson Crowder, look out for him in fantasy. That guy's going to go off this year in the slot, in my opinion, for them. And the Niners, we already beat the drum a little bit on them, but they're at 15-1 right now. I think that's some significant value for a team, like I said, with Trey Lance, who's going to throw the ball deep a lot more often, and they're going to extend the field. They just got to get Deebo Samuel's contract situation cleaned up. But those are two teams I like a lot in that market.
I like that. And there's so much that go into this market, kind of as you said, with the best record. I think about the highest scoring teams. Is your defense on the field? Can they stay on the field? Is your offense coming back a lot? What are the coaching decisions like Brandon Staley? There's so many variances that go into betting this market that I too am a little bit confused with the highest scoring, just as it comes down to decisions, especially towards the end of the game. So Jay, what would your advice be as we look to bet this market from a bookmaking perspective?
Yeah, so the first thing that I would look at is teams that throw the ball a lot and teams that are expected to be very good, but not quite elite to the point where they're sitting everyone in the fourth quarter all the time. So a lot of the AFC West teams stand out to me in this regard. Certainly the Chargers, where they tick a lot of boxes. They have an explosive passing game. They're very aggressive on fourth down, as we know, which is going to produce more scoring. Also, the Raiders, who didn't score very well last season, but adding Devontae Adams to Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, Derek Carr has shown that he can throw for a ton of yards. So they're a team that might be playing catch up a bit as well. And then if you like another long shot, I'd look at the Vikings at 20-1, where they fit that good but not absolutely elite kind of team. And I think that the Vikings are being a little bit slept on in terms of their offense and individual markets around players like Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson, because they were a team that has run the ball to their detriment too much the past couple of years, and that should be an explosive passing offense. Kirk Cousins is fine. He's a good quarterback. Justin Jefferson might be the best receiver in the league after this season. So that's just another team that I'd look at.
It's interesting. And last year's champion, of course, was the Dallas Cowboys in terms of points scored, but it wasn't because of their offense. They got like 8 return touchdowns and, interceptions, fumbles, kick returns. And I think to that degree, you need a little bit of luck. You need a little bit of contribution from the defense. I guess, Vaughn, is there a process of elimination here where we can kind of rule out some of these teams that are at least considered in the top 10?
I think there's a team that you could absolutely roll out that's high up on the board, and that's the Rams. I mean, Jay actually just said something about the Vikings and how their offense is going to, I think, be a lot better this year. They got Kevin O'Connell, the OC from the Rams, and they also got the tight ends coach, who was the passing game coordinator, Wes Phillips. So the Vikings are definitely going to be a pass-happy offense. And with Justin Jefferson, I mean, I'm buying all the stock on the Vikings this year. So I love that 20-1 look. I think the Rams will take the step back. Obviously, losing the coaching, playing toughest strength of schedule, one of the hardest ones, Super Bowl champions, no easy feat to defend that. So, throw them out the window right away, in my opinion. And I love that Vikings look. But AFC West, I definitely want to ask your opinion, Jay, on this too, because, we talked about the win total. I'm fading the Raiders this year. Like, I felt like the Raiders were a very lucky team last year. But that look on their offense, scoring the most points, is good because they trailed in 15 out of 17 games last year. They played catch up a ton, and they were great in one-score games. So I can't disagree with that look, but I'm also fading them on their win total because I think that they're an overrated team. So that's one way maybe I can get my money back and hedge out.
Yeah, don't like the Raiders either. Yeah, a lot of question marks about that team and playing in that division. Someone's going to suffer, and they're definitely the number one suffering candidate. So they've got some upside, and they should be able to score, but the defense is pretty suspect beyond those 2 pass rushes in Crosby and Jones. And and a lot of question marks about Josh McDaniels. Didn't work out great for him last time he was a head coach. So we'll see how that plays out.
We'll see if we can get them with the worst record, because we are going to get into the market for the worst record and lowest scoring team in the NFL this season in a second. But first, we have to let you guys know that weekends are better with MLB Sunday leadoff coverage presented by Uber Eats. Catch the Tigers take on the Blue Jays in Toronto on Sunday, July 31st at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, live on NBC and Peacock. To learn more, go to peacocktv.com/MLB. And if you want a chance to win $25,000 on the game, download the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet and enter Sunday's free Grand Slam Pick'em contest. Now, we just went over best record, highest scoring team, and I'm actually more excited to talk about the worst record in the lowest scoring team in the NFL. My edge of the day is actually going to be in one of these markets. So let's get to it, Jay. I look at camp. I see a lot of the news kind of coming out of different teams, including the Seahawks, the Texans, the Falcons, what's going to happen. When you look at the worst record in the NFL, there's a lot to digest here. Like, what exactly is it? The quarterback play? Is it the defense? Is it coaching combination? What stands out to you as we try to break down the worst record for the upcoming season?
Yeah, so definitely looking at schedule again, also just looking at disaster potential. And I think that's why the Texans at plus 300, I probably would be steering clear of that just because I think their division caps their disaster potential in that they're going to play 6 games against teams that are not within the top 7 or 8 favorites for the Super Bowl. And, they were competent enough last season. Davis Mills showed a little bit. So I think that they will probably stumble their way to 5 wins or so. In terms of disaster potential, going to Chicago. I think that who's the best player on the Bears right now? Is it Robert Quinn? Who's he's the 15th best pass rusher in the league.
You're stealing all of my thunder for my upcoming episode.
Yeah.
Let me just
let's also add Robert Quinn for now.
Yes, exactly. And he had a big sack total last year, but didn't have the pressures to back it up, expecting him to come back down to earth. And anyway, if we're talking about Robert Quinn being in the conversation for someone's best player, then they're in trouble. And I think that Justin Fields, it's a bit of a grim market, but I think he's just about the most likely player to get injured in the NFL this season, playing behind that offensive line. And then it gets real bad after that. Then it's Trevor Siemian and Nathan Peterman. We're only 2 injuries away from Nathan Peterman leading the Chicago Bears. And also, I think that division, the Packers who have some downside, but they're still going to be good, really good. The Vikings, I think, are going to be an above 500 team. I think Detroit might be okay. I think they might be pretty solid and a frisky team for the playoffs. So I think the Bears, the bottom could fall out. They're plus 1,200 to have the worst record. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if that happens.
Yeah, to me, this is a 4-team race. And interestingly enough, I agree with your I think one of the 4 teams in my mind is Houston, just because the Lovie Smith experience might be. I mean, if you can't win a game at Illinois, you're going to win a game at the NFL. Okay. All right. But for sure, I think the other 3, which are all NFC teams, are the Falcons, Seahawks, and Bears. And I think broadly, the fact that it is a 4-team race and you're getting a price like 12-1 on the Bears is a bet you almost have to put in your pocket, considering everything you just laid out. Anything about the Falcons or Seahawks or any other team that we haven't mentioned, Vaughn, that you would like to add in terms of consideration here?
I mean, I definitely like the Falcons. Last year, I was on the Texans. I bet them, I think, at plus 325. I got burned by the Jaguars, who are going for the 3-peat now for the #1 overall pick. And, Drew, I definitely would want to hear your take after this on the Jaguars season, because I know you guys were high on them last year. And the Urban Meyer experience is past, so people may be back on that Jags train. But I feel like at 10-1, they're a team that's definitely worth consideration. But the Falcons, I mean, Marcus Mariota, we can't plan on this guy being the quarterback for 17 games. Desmond Ritter's definitely got to step in here at some point later in the season, and they're going to tank. I mean, come back, get Calvin Ridley, all these rookies together. Drake London, you got Kyle Pitts. Now Tyler Algier hopefully can be a candidate. You look much better next year if you have the #1 overall pick this year. So I definitely look at the Falcons as a team worth betting on. The Jags, and nothing positive coming out of Seahawks camp. I mean, I'd love to hear your guys' take, but it's been nothing but Drew Lock memes for me all summer. So that's a guy, I don't have much faith in that Seahawks roster, but Pete Carroll as a coach could at least get them to, 5 wins or so.
Yeah. I'll second that. And in general, it's a tough trip to make the trip to Seattle. Some teams, showing up and no showing when they're 3 or 4 point favorites is entirely possible. I do think Seattle kind of backs their way into 4 or 5 wins and takes them out of consideration for worse teams. So maybe we've narrowed this down to 2, Atlanta and Chicago. And what scares me about going all in on Chicago here as opposed to Atlanta is it feels like Atlanta is going for the 1 pick. like there's an element to what they're doing that everybody kind of knows, like, hey, this is a lost year. We need a quarterback in next year's quarterback rich draft. And, they've kind of set up the entire, structure of their roster to, have an opportunity to swing away next year. So Atlanta spooks me a bit, but, this is a fun market top to bottom, frankly, in terms of trying to figure out who is the worst of these relatively questionable teams. I will throw cold water on betting Jags for the worst possible team. I think very realistic expectation that Trevor Lawrence makes the year 2 quarterback jump. No reason to think that, that's not in the cards, considering what they've invested in that team, that offense, and the change in coaching. In fact, and maybe this was just because there was nothing else to bet on this week, but I bet the Jags to win the AFC and the Super Bowl at some pretty absurd prices.
I had a feeling that was coming.
You can't.
Oh boy.
I mean, you squint hard enough, it looks like last year's Bengals, frankly. I mean, really.
Well, I'm not
and-
disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
There were some pretty big numbers out on the Jaguars in the futures market, and there
Yeah.
still are.
150 to 1. I mean, it's actually, I'll just like clarify, like, I don't think they're actually going to win. Like, this isn't like this is a great plus EV bet. It's just the price is wrong. 150 to 1 is not right. Like, you have a team.
What that is.
Is that Jags? Oh, that's
it's a Jags lottery ticket.
Mega Millions lottery
the
ticket.
Mega Millions,
That's
but it's
pretty
one
fair.
and the same.
That's pretty fair. But yeah, 150 to 1 is not right. And realistically, I think that those bets are going to gain equity between now and kickoff. Like, you're already seeing the stories about how professional camp is being run. You're already hearing the players kind of comment about how much they like playing for Peterson and about how they like being treated like adults. And like all of this kind of will in general, I think lead the market to shortening them from like 150 to say like 100 or maybe even 50, depending on how good they look in the preseason. So that's just my 2 cents.
I love people getting involved in the comment section now, live, talking about the Jaguars.
Very hard. You have to close your eyes, in fact.
Yeah, very hard. It's still minuscule, but it is there. It's just tiny. Jacksonville 3 wins last year. We'll see what happens with them. But I do agree with the overall sentiment that they will not have the worst record. That's sitting at 10 to 1. Falcons concerning 4 to 1. And then the Bears 12 to 1. I actually lean towards the Falcons to have the worst record. But I think what's fascinating, if we look at the lowest scoring team, and that's what I'll get into, myself with my edge of the day in the NFL, those kind of are correlated directly, right? Like, if your offense can't put up points, you're probably not going to win games unless you have the world's best defense, which is not happening with a lot of those teams we just talked about. So, Vaughn, I'll start with you here. I look at the market for the lowest scoring team during the regular season in the NFL: Falcons 5 to 1, Texans plus 550. You then find the Bears 6 to 1. Out of these teams, anywhere on the board, who stands out to you? Which offense do you think are going to struggle this season?
Yeah, I can't really disagree with any of those teams, but the thing is they're going to be trailing in so many games. There's going to be a lot of fourth quarter garbage time points for some of those teams too. So, this market is one that I'm willing to take a longer shot on. And there's 2 teams specifically that are close to my heart that I want to talk about in the AFC North: the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. You're getting 12 to 1 and 20 to 1 prices on those 2 teams. Listen, the Steelers, it's going to be bad. This season's going to be rough. Post Ben Roethlisberger era, it's not Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett. We got rid of Heinz Field. The offensive line was the worst of the Ben Roethlisberger era last season. It's still terrible. They did not get any better at all. And now you're relying on Claypool or Deontay Johnson to be your wide receiver ones. A lot of Najee Harris. If he gets hurt behind a terrible offensive line, season's over for them. That's a team that struggled last season to score 21 points per game. So they're going to take a step back. And the Cleveland Browns, I mean, it's a longer shot. Those odds open at 30 to 1 with the Deshaun Watson news. But obviously, if he plays at any degree, throw that ticket out. But, Josh Rosen, Josh Dobbs, Jacoby Brissett, sign me up for the lowest scoring team there right now, because they're one injury of Nick Chubb away from having nothing. We know Amari Cooper has injury issues. Kareem Hunt has problems staying on the field. The Browns offense in general could be in a lot of trouble this season. So 12 to 1 and 20 to 1 on the Steelers and the Browns. I love those 2.
That's pretty interesting, actually. I hadn't really thought through that way of attacking the uncertainty for Deshaun Watson, but that's not a crazy look. Jay, any
Also
other?
AFC North, the defense,
yeah, especially in the AFC
division.
North. Toughest conference, toughest division. Got a lot of defense. Yeah, strong defenses up and down the AFC North. So that's not crazy. I really don't know or have a leader in the clubhouse here. I think the bad teams we just talked about and the propensity for them to score garbage time points is real. And in fact, you look across this market over the year, or just who is ultimately the lowest scoring team in the past several years. And it's not always, just truly the worst offense or truly the worst team. Jay, do you have a general read on who we ought to be looking at here?
Yeah, I like the look on Cleveland. I think that when you're looking at long shots in a market like this, you want variance, and Cleveland is by far the highest variance team in the league, just because of the Deshaun Watson situation, where I'd probably endorse a bet on them being the lowest scoring team, and also endorse a bet on them winning the Super Bowl, just so you're riding those two sides. In terms of another long shot, the team that leapt out to me was Tennessee. 30 to 1. I think that team has severe disaster potential, particularly on offense. I think Derrick Henry might be done, honestly, with his workload, with the injury even before the injury, his numbers were going well down in terms of his efficiency, in terms of the broken tackles. There's not a good history of guys who have had his type of workload continuing to be efficient. So I'd be worried about him. I'd be worried about the fact that they don't have any real receivers. I'd be worried about the fact that Ryan Tannehill doesn't seem too happy about Malik Willis breathing down his neck. I think that offense could be really bad. And I think the defense will be fine and will elevate them to a certain respectable level of mediocrity. But yeah, I would be fading the Titans in every way this season.
The main theme for this discussion for both really best, but specifically worst teams and lowest scoring. And Jay, you said it, and obviously it's chaos, right? That's what we're looking for. You look at the Jaguars last year, less than 15 points per game. Giants were close, 15.2 points per game. I mean, you're looking for extremely low points per game averages. Jaguars finished with 253 throughout the season. So it's a fun market. I'm going to break it down for my edge of the day. But in the meantime, we appreciate you both coming on, helping us break down these markets. You can give Vaughn and Jay, you better give him a follow on Twitter. In the meantime, Jay is at Croucher JD. He comes on every single week, gives us a unique look into the betting markets here on Bet the Edge. And Vaughn at V-Money Sports. You can find a lot more of his plays on social media and on NBCSportsEdge.com. Unless he wins the Mega Millions, you cannot find him there. He kicks off the rest of his career. Both of you guys, thank you very much. Have an incredible weekend.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Drew.
Well, that means one thing left here on the show, Drew. It's Edge of the Day. I don't have my Mega Millions tickets or whatever everyone's playing for the $1 billion out there. Been seeing it circulate on social media, on the news here. But I'll take a better shot on one of your bets. I think whatever you're playing, I'll have a better shot at winning than the lottery.
Yeah, I mean, when you get up and you get to do shows like this and talk NFL, who needs millions of dollars, right? Yeah, we're already rich, right? So, no, I think, and by the way, I love Jay's kind of throwing cold water on the Titans. That helps that's not cooling me off on how much I love my Jaguars position right now.
You should feel so much better on this.
yeah, no, I think, no, this is, it's been a fun time talking about the NFL, and I thought we made some pretty key points and some pretty good markets there. But people probably want to bet something today, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's give them a tennis pick, and I'm going to go back to Atlanta, which is colloquially known as the John Isner Open. He is the 6-time champion down in Atlanta. He effectively owns that court. He played an incredible match last night against an up-and-coming NCAA champion named Ben Shelton. It was a must-watch tennis match, really high-quality tie breaks especially, and Isner was able to come through. He is playing as well as he has ever looked at in the Atlanta Open. And in general, I believe his overall career record here is something like 33-5. He's only ever lost 5 times. And even those losses were a little bit fluky and a little bit unlucky. So this is effectively his court. This is effectively his tournament. And he takes on the up and coming I guess the most buzzworthy young American, at least in the market. And that is Jenson Brooksby. I have not made a bet on Brooksby in about 6 months. I think he is broadly overpriced. People are kind of pricing the potential of what he could ultimately be much more so than they are actually correctly capturing how good he is now. Even traditional ELO models that kind of try to do a decent job of properly rating a player, I think are missing Brooksby's kind of the potential for his floor being pretty low on any given day. And I think John Isner is going to be an extremely tough matchup for him because in general, Brooksby has not played well against the tall players, the strong servers. And John Isner yesterday won 80% of his service points. He was just an absolute machine.
He's in good form.
In good form. The aces were plentiful. Just a handful of double faults, which I think, considering that was his first match in a while, he gets shaken a little bit of the rust off. I think Isner gets a clean win today. I like him on the money line at plus 145. I like a little sprinkle on Isner 2-0 at an even better price. But Isner, I think ultimately he is headed for a collision course here with Tommy Paul in the final. That's going to be a great head-to-head versus 2 Americans. But in general, I think Brooksby, you're catching Isner in his best possible setting. You're catching Brooksby a little bit overrated by the market. And I think this is going to be a fun one in the nightcap in Atlanta.
Okay, I cannot wait to watch this. 8 p.m. Eastern tonight in Atlanta, plus 145. How will you then cap? I'm just curious now. How will you then attack the final if Isner comes out on top?
Man. Well, so
Well,
he'll have to go through Tiafo. Yeah, he'll have to probably.
Correct.
So there's another kind of similar matchup between Tiafo and Nakashima. Nakashima, I think, is pretty overrated by the market as well. I think Tiafo Isner is going to be a fun one, but I think Isner comes through in 3, and then ultimately Isner, Tommy Paul final. I give Isner the slight edge, but Tommy Paul is playing really well right now. So I think if you're catching Isner as a dog in either of those 2 matches against Tiafo or Paul, then you got to play him, but. The market may react if what happens tonight is what I expect and Isner gets a clean win, then the market's they're going to be forced to react. And
I don't know how many. How much of an underdog, if at all, he will be. Plus 145 tonight, though. It's a great price, and I look forward to watching this. You've been talking so much about tennis, as you always do. I've been playing lately, and I'm convinced.
Oh, hell
yeah. I love tennis, and I'm convinced it's because you talk about it. It makes me want to do it even more.
There's an upset. There's a big time upset in the works right now. Iga Swiatek at the Warsaw Open. This is effectively the Iga Swiatek Open. She's getting beat right now, 5-1 by Caroline Garcia. So maybe a potential live entry coming up here if Caroline Garcia can close out the first set here.
That'd be crazy.
But tennis never sleeps. If you're looking for if you're looking for something fun to bet in the summer and you're exhausted by getting your brain beaten in by baseball, tennis. Go for some tennis.
It's like a nice ad. If you're sick of losing in baseball betting, boy, do we have a thing for you. Bet tennis. Yeah. Or you could tie up all your money in the futures market in NFL like I've been doing. That's a different way. And that's where I'll go for my edge of the day. We talked about the lowest scoring team in the NFL season. Shop around, look at this price. PointsBet, I'm sure we'll have these back up shortly, but I grabbed the Chicago Bears plus 650. Let's start with the fact that the Bears have an entire new staff, right? New GM, new coaches, new coordinators. None of them have NFL head coaching experience. That stands out. And I think Jay, Vaughn, and us too gave good insight on when you're betting this market, what you're looking at. Their schedule, no, it's not the toughest, but I look at their roster. Yes, they have a mobile quarterback in Justin Fields, but David Montgomery, Darnell Mooney, okay, Cole Kmet, then what? They have a lack of serious and overall weapons. More importantly, an extremely weak offensive line. And if you look at the look-ahead lines for this season, which I was doing this morning, they have a total of 6 games with totals more than 45 points. A lot of 42s on the board, a lot of 43.5s on the board. That matters. What also matters is the Chicago Bears play 4 of their final 5 games at Soldier Field. It is going to be freezing in Chicago if you have not watched games at Soldier Field towards the end of this season. They're going to run the ball a lot. They're not going to have an option. And for that reason, to be the lowest scoring team, it's not the longest shot in the books. I'm taking the Chicago Bears at plus 650, Drew.
Oh, my goodness. That's a very sound handicap. And the only thing I can add to that is that the Bears are going to be at a deficit a lot. And when you're at a deficit, it becomes important to pass the football. And you know what happens when when your opponent knows that you're in a must-pass situation? They tend to send extra pass rushers, and they pin their ears back a little bit. And thank goodness for the Bears, they have a top offensive line to really. Oh, wait a second. They have the worst offensive line in the NFL. That, really and truly, like if there's one team that's going to struggle to get garbage time points, it's the Bears because of the offensive line. So,
and it's no secret, right? I think a lot of people will be betting into this team as it gets closer, and it's not like a diss. Like, I almost feel bad. Like he has no weapons. Like I don't know what you're going to do, and you can't really run the ball a ton because you don't have any protection. So it's just going to be an interesting situation in Chicago.
Yeah. I'm getting some notes here about some trade deadline rumors. Is it true this is going to be your last show with us?
I was like, oh my gosh, what trade rumors as we're live on air. Okay, yes. So today was a special show. I'm happy you said that. And it's not just because we were talking NFL and it's a Friday and tennis, but today it is my last show at NBC Sports. I actually wrote some notes this morning because I was getting emotional. And I have decided for everyone listening and watching over the last, few years to take a few months off and step away and focus on life right now. Life is important and it is precious. And I'm not going to make a long, sad goodbye on this show because I'm naturally emotional. But Drew, first and foremost, I do want to thank you because you have worked so hard. You are the best co-host and betting analyst in the business. And I mean that. And our producer, Adam, who I've worked with for so many years now, top producer, even a better friend to me and to all of our researchers, betting analysts, I'm going to cry, I swear, other producers, really everyone with NBC. I cannot thank you enough for being the most awesome work family. I love you all very much. I cannot wait to continue to watch you guys throughout the college football and NFL season, all the content coming out from here. And to all of our listeners, viewers, fans of the show, I appreciate you all so much. It's been a wild ride and extremely fun, but I do look forward to taking some time off and focusing on some personal stuff.
Well, very well said. You're going to be greatly missed. The professionalism and the level that you brought every day on this show was outstanding, and it was an honor and a pleasure to work with you. Yeah.
It's been really fun. It's been an awesome few years, and I will still be betting the NFL like crazy. So Drew, if I don't get your text when you have an amazing insight or bet that you're making, I'm going to be mad at you. So now everyone here hears it. So I'm holding you to it.
I'll send you more tips now.
Yeah, like more tips. Exactly.
Yeah, we need to stay in touch, obviously. So this is the easy way. I'll just send
we
you
will stay in touch. But it has been so fun. So I'm going to close out the show for one final time for Drew Dinsick and our entire Edge crew. I am Sara Perlman. Thanks for watching Bet the Edge here on the NBC Sports Edge YouTube channel. Have an amazing weekend. And of course, maybe more importantly, best of luck with all your bets.